Discover the incredible hidden journey of the Mayans. 5 amazing transformations you never knew. Sarah stared at the flyer pinned to her classroom door, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and dread. The words shimmered with promise, but inside, doubt twisted like a knife. Could she really connect her students to something so vast and foreign? Or would it only serve to heighten the skepticism that loomed over her every move in this small, unyielding town? The conservative values of her community felt like a cage, one that snuffed out her ambitious dreams and left her with an insatiable heaviness. Rummaging through her late grandfather's attic a week prior had ignited a flicker of hope. The dusty journal she discovered unveiled a vibrant world of Mayan civilization and the adventures he lived as a young archaeologist in the 1960s. Those stories mirrored her own struggles, resonating with the richness of her heritage. Yet, as she shared the revealing tales with her students, their disinterest felt as palpable as a brick wall. Parents grumbled in the hallway, hesitant to embrace anything that challenged their traditional views. Where will all this lead? The voice in her head grew louder, insisting she tread carefully through the treacherous waters of ambition and expectation. She couldn't shake the image of her fellow teachers' raised eyebrows, their skepticism a heavy fog lingering over her every lesson. What if this exploration of history, this inquiry into her past, was nothing more than a foolish distraction from the realities of her failing school and underfunded curriculum? Would pursuing this passion make her a pariah among the very people she was desperate to impress? Before she could ruminate any further, fear twisted in her stomach. A sudden wave of uncertainty rushed through her. Was she betraying her grandfather's memory by not honoring the profound insights he had gained through hardship? The ghost of her lineage felt both comforting and suffocating, pushing her to confront the moral dilemma of whether to seek truth or bow to the pressures around her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the days flew by, her determination competed with despair. Would she be able to break through the layers of indifference and prejudice that enveloped her pursuit? Just as she had begun to harness the support of students inspired by her passion, the whispers grew louder within the community. The upcoming school board meeting loomed like a dark cloud, shrouded with uncertainty. Sarah grappled with her fears, swallowing hard at the thought of presenting the hidden narratives of her grandfather's experiences. Would anyone hear her? Could she shatter the rigid walls of tradition? The night before she was to stand before the board, she stumbled upon more of her grandfather's belongings. An ominous letter surfaced, detailing instances of institutional prejudice he had faced, betrayals that denied him recognition and the acknowledgement he rightfully deserved. A deep, uncomfortable ache pulsed through her, igniting a fiery determination intertwined with crushing despair. Was she ready to bear the weight of this history, ready to wrestle with the moral implications of her quest? As her heart raced at the prospect of unveiling this hidden truth, a note slipped under her door. You don't know everything about your grandfather. Blood thundered in her ears, igniting the flickering embers of her resolve. With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. The path she chose would challenge not only her identity, but could upend her very community. The battle was just beginning, and she braced herself, ready to confront a past shrouded in both pride and treachery. Would she be able to carry her family's story into the light, or would the darkness swallow her whole? As dawn broke, Sarah's mind whirred with conflicting thoughts. The school board meeting loomed over her like an impending storm, each detail becoming a fine thread woven into the tapestry of her panic. She paced her small living room, feeling the weight of her grandfather's legacy bearing down on her shoulders. The ominous letter still lingered in her thoughts, its implication a ghost that refused to fade. Yesterday had sent her into a spiral, confronting the painful realities of how far prejudice can stretch, even within seemingly mundane walls. The doubts about her path clawed at her resolve like hungry birds, eager to pick apart the threads of her confidence. She wondered about her grandfather's battles, how often he felt alone and unheard, fighting for his truth in a world eager to silence it. His struggles resonated with her deeply now. She couldn't ignore the call to honor him by pursuing her own truth, no matter how daunting that pursuit might be. The board meeting would be her moment of reckoning. She stared into the mirror, searching for a glimmer of the fierce determination that had once pushed her to pursue teaching against all odds. Today, she had to embody that fire, channeling her fears into a resolute force. If she faltered, it wouldn't just be her own spirit crushed. It would feel like betraying everything her grandfather valiantly stood for. She crafted her presentation, words pouring out in a desperate stream, driven by the urgency she felt deep within. Each story from her grandfather's journal, each artifact she had unearthed from the attic, became not just a lesson in history, but a weapon against skepticism. The rhythms of Mayan culture, the ingenuity of a civilization that created and thrived against considerable odds, mirrored her struggle and her community's conservatism. She wanted to shine a light on this nuanced narrative, to inspire students through connections that resonated warmly in their experiences. The anticipation of resistance gnawed at her insides. The parents whose stern faces she had seen in hallways played like a reel in her mind. Would they see the light in what she offered, or would her efforts be met with scorn and dismissal? With every fleeting moment, she felt her heart race, amplifying her resolve, yet threatening to drown her in fear. Hours passed in a blur, and before she knew it, she stood outside the school's auditorium, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She could see the silhouettes of board members through the frosted glass, discussing matters that felt both trivial and monumental compared to the weight she carried. Her fingers trembled as she smoothed down her blouse, drawing a deep breath. This was her moment, not just to share a story, but to redefine what bravery meant for her community. As the auditorium doors swung open, ushering her into a blast of dim, muted light, she felt the weight transform. This was a crucible, a chance not only to share her grandfather's legacy, but to encourage others to listen, to empathize, and to challenge their own convictions. A flicker of faith ignited within her. She hoped her journey might awaken something dormant within each face turned toward her. But as she stepped up to the podium, a harsh whisper burst through the crowd, cutting through the tension like ice. "Don't you dare embarrass us!" The voice summoned a chill that coursed through her veins. And at that moment, she realized her battle wasn't just about history. It was about confronting the fears that had long taken root in her heart. Tension thickened in the air like storm clouds on the horizon. The time had come to face not just the board, but the depths of her resolve. Would she command this moment and make her grandfather proud, or would the storm that brewed within consume her? The crowd's murmurs faded as Sarah took a steadying breath, her resolve sharpening with each heartbeat. The sharp intrusion of that voice had done something unexpected. It ignited the embers of her determination. It wasn't just about sharing her grandfather's tale. It was about articulating a vision, one that spoke not only of the past, but also of understanding and reconciliation for the present. Her hands gripped the podium, firm yet trembling. Stealing a glance at the board members, she saw familiar faces, parents whose expectations felt like a heavy shroud pressing down on her shoulders. Their disapproval swirled around her, but it also nudged her to rise above their judgments. No longer could she lean into her insecurities. This was about growth, both hers and her community's. "Good evening," she began, her voice steadying as the words took form. "Tonight, I wish to share not just a story about the Mayans, but a journey that resonates with struggles we all face. These were people who thrived against insurmountable odds, and their legacy serves as a testament to resilience." As she spoke, images flashed in her mind. Her grandfather's passionate discussions about history and culture, the way he fought exuberantly against the ignorance that surrounded him. Each narrative thread she wove into her presentation took on a life of its own, anchoring her to purpose and direction. She could almost feel her grandfather's presence. His legacy surged within her like a tidal wave, fortifying her stance. The board members' faces softened slightly as she began to paint vivid pictures with her words. Tales of extraordinary accomplishments, vibrant societies, and culture emerged from the pages of her grandfather's journal. Their achievements were not merely items of history, they were lessons in perseverance. Imagine a society that thrived not just on agriculture, but on complex mathematics and architecture. They faced natural disasters, invasions, and internal strife. She continued, drawing from the stories she had meticulously prepared. But they stood resolute, rebuilding their lives from the ashes. Isn't that a powerful lesson for us today? A few murmurs of interest echoed through the auditorium, a flicker of curiosity emanating from the skeptical parents, the enigmatic board members shifting in their seats, perhaps questioning their own perceptions. Sarah felt the immediate pulse of connection, charging the room with energy. She was no longer a trembling figure on display. She was a voice of authenticity, channeling every ounce of her fear into vibrant fervor. Yet successful moments are rarely unchallenged. Toward the back of the room, she spotted the source of the earlier disruption. Mrs. Jenkins, arms crossed defiantly. The woman's hypercritical glare aimed like an arrow toward her. A visceral tempest of doubt surged anew in Sarah's mind. Was she truly making headway, or was she merely stirring the pot of disdain? But Sarah leaned into the moment instead of recoiling. She could sense the hushed skepticism. A challenge had revealed itself, a chance to transcend not only her insecurities, but also the rigid expectations of others. It wasn't about just delivering facts. It was about weaving them into an emotional tapestry that screamed relevance. She paused, allowing confusion to ripple through the audience before breaking the silence with a question that cut to the core. Why should we embrace these lessons? Why do they matter today? Because we all confront our own storms, don't we? That struggle, that fight for understanding, mirrors the legacy left behind by the Mayans and by men like my grandfather. The room teetered on the brink of something transformative, a threshold imbued with possibilities. She had dared to make herself vulnerable, yet in that vulnerability lay the seed of profound connection, a realization that perhaps they shared a collective journey far more similar than any of them had previously considered. But that connection came with a cost. Mrs. Jenkins rose sharply, indignation radiating from her, fist clenched at her side. "You mustn't twist history for personal gain." Sarah braced herself for a confrontation that could fracture her fragile grasp on control. Her heartbeat quickened, poised at the edge of a cliff. Would she allow fear to suppress her voice, or would she respond with courage, embracing not just her grandfather's legacy, but her own? The air grew thick with anticipation. It was now or never. The personal storm she had faced all her life loomed larger than ever, testing her will. Would she bend, or would she break through? Mrs. Jenkins's accusation hung in the air, sharp and biting. The audience shifted uneasily, eyes darting between the two women, the tension palpable. Sarah felt the heat of defense surge through her veins, but knew she had to tread carefully. This moment didn't just represent a singular confrontation. It was emblematic of her struggle to establish her voice amidst the cacophony of expectations. Deliberately, she straightened her posture, embodying every ounce of tenacity she had mustered throughout her life. This was a defining moment, a crucible through which her character could forge itself anew. "Mrs. Jenkins," she began, her voice steady but firm, "my intent is not to twist history, but to illuminate its lessons for our present and our future. We all carry legacies, whether we acknowledge them or not." The words felt transformative as they left her lips. The audience was now her mirror, reflecting back not just skepticism, but a burgeoning curiosity, a willingness to listen. But she could sense the rigidity in the air. Mrs. Jenkins was a formidable opponent, and her grip on the narrative was not easily relinquished. "You speak of legacies, yet your story is merely a varnish over the truth," Mrs. Jenkins countered. Her certainty was unyielding, an anchor pulling Sarah back into feelings of doubt. "Are you using your grandfather's story as a tool for rhetoric, or do you genuinely believe the lessons are applicable?" Instead of shrinking from the challenge, Sarah leaned into it. She drew from instinct, fueled by a newfound fervor. "I don't stand here to rewrite history, but to invite a dialogue that has been dormant for too long. The Mayans faced adversity with ingenuity and hope. So too do we encounter challenges in our lives. Aren't we, in some respect, shaped by those struggles?" With every word, she felt herself reigniting the flame deep within her. She could sense the shuffling of chairs as even previously indifferent faces leaned in, curious about what she would say next. Those murmurs of doubt transformed into a chorus of contemplation, the whole room oscillating on the precipice of change. "Think about it," she pressed on, gesturing with passion. "What we can learn from them is not about glorifying their past, but applying resilience, creativity, and understanding to our present-day realities. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, but our futures depend on how we interpret and utilize their stories." The shift was palpable. Even Mrs. Jenkins seemed momentarily taken aback, uncertainty flickering across her features. This moment was pivotal. Sarah could see it in the faces before her, expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. One brave voice had flooded their cocoon of discomfort with possibilities. Yet all was not won. A creeping self-doubt surfaced. Was she truly breaking through to them, or was this merely an interruption in their narrative of dismissal? Her fingers trembled on the podium, grounding herself against the wave of uncertainty. "Life is a mosaic of stories," she stated, conviction filling her words. "Each lesson, like a piece of glass, reflects not just its own color, but complements the bigger picture. Are we so set in our ways that we refuse to see what unites us, a shared humanity shaped by dreams and struggles?" She took a breath, letting the rhythmic beat of her heart anchor her thoughts. The moment stretched as silence enveloped the room. And in that silence, Sarah realized that she was no longer just reciting anecdotes. She was challenging every individual in her audience to pull from their own experiences and reflect upon shared histories. Then the unexpected happened. A hand shot up from the back, not Mrs. Jenkins's, a father, someone who had remained silent throughout her talk. "How do we ensure that these ideas aren't lost to time?" His voice broke through the atmosphere, inviting a new layer of engagement to the conversation. Sarah's pulse quickened, a new direction unfurling before her. This inquiry transformed the room's energy. She had ignited a spark. "That's what I hope to explore," she said, a hint of excitement rushing in.
By fostering discussions and encouraging curiosity, we can preserve these lessons, ensuring they shape not just us, but future generations. As Sarah concluded, confidence blossomed within her. She had learned something crucial. The confrontation had pulled her out of herself, compelling her to grow, adapt, and engage more deeply than she ever thought possible. But as the audience buzzed with renewed dialogue, she felt an unsettling flutter in her stomach. The confrontation was only the beginning. The real battle lay ahead, one that demanded not just bravery in storytelling, but in confronting her own fears. Would this newfound courage endure when faced with the harsher realities lurking beyond the sanctuary of the auditorium? With every heartbeat, Sarah sensed the weight of expectations bear down on her once more, a stark reminder that she wasn't done yet. The tension loomed. The audience had shifted, but what of the world outside that awaited her? The moment of truth was approaching, and she could almost hear the distant echoes of her grandfather's wisdom urging her forward. The greatest story is the one yet to unfold. The aftermath of her confrontation with Mrs. Jenkins left Sarah suspended in uncertainty. The auditorium buzzed with conversations as people clustered in small groups, dissecting her words. She had sparked a pivotal moment, yet the tangible excitement of the audience contrasted sharply with the unease stirring in her core. The dialogue felt invigorating, a breath of fresh air, but doubt creeped in like an unwelcome guest. Had she merely lit a match, or was she truly fanning the flames of meaningful change? Stepping off the stage, she felt the curious eyes follow her, an ambiguous mix of admiration and skepticism. With each step toward the exit, she sensed a shift. A weight had lifted, yet another had settled. She needed to confront the next layer of this metamorphosis, but what lay ahead was still cloaked in ambiguity. Outside, the glow of the evening sky offered an illusion of calm, but within, she felt a storm brewing. As she walked to her car, Sarah's mind raced. The questions posed by the audience replayed relentlessly, the most prominent being the father's poignant inquiry: how to ensure that the lessons she spoke of wouldn't fade away into obscurity. It resonated deeply, stirring a sense of responsibility within her. She had ignited a conversation, but now it was her duty to sustain that spark, to translate transient interest into tangible action. This realization ignited a determination that channeled her into a new purpose. In the days following, Sarah dedicated herself to bridging the disconnection between past lessons and present applications. She set out to create a set of workshops that would encourage deeper exploration of the themes she touched on during her speech, and beyond. The task felt overwhelming. Uncertainty loomed as she pondered what key elements would spark the desire for continued engagement. She hesitated, finding herself pulling away from her initial enthusiasm. Could she navigate through this daunting endeavor without losing sight of her core message? A moment of clarity came when she decided to reach out to her former college classmates, a coalition of diverse thinkers she once valued. It sparked an idea. Collaboration would amplify her energy and provide essential perspectives missing from her solitary brainstorming. Their varied paths, education, art, technology, would enrich the workshops, morphing them from merely informational sessions into experiential journeys filled with creativity and inquiry.
Yet, as she crafted the plans, a familiar fear swelled. Would they see her vision clearly? Would her peers respect her leadership when many of them had excelled in their own fields? She couldn't help but wonder if this fear was a distraction meant to derail her progress. In reflective moments, the age-old hesitance resurfaced. Feelings of inadequacy threatened to undermine her newfound confidence. But rather than succumb to that nagging voice, Sarah summoned the resolve that had fueled her confrontation. Risk was a necessary companion in this unfolding narrative. Just as her grandfather had encouraged storytelling as a means of empowerment, she needed to live those values as she embarked on this new path. The desire to share knowledge and spark curiosity burned brightly within her, eclipsing the insecurities attempting to tether her back. Drawing on her understanding of the Mayans' resilience, Sarah crafted opportunities for participants to engage deeply with history through interactive dialogues and reflections that connected them to their own experiences. The workshops would emphasize action, how to carry these stories forward beyond the confines of discussion, striving to ensure that history was not lost to time. The echo of her grandfather's wisdom flickered in her mind, urging her forward into the unknown. Sarah smiled to herself, realizing that she had reached another crucial juncture in her personal growth. Leaning into the future required both courage and vulnerability, but her experiences had shown her that the richness of the journey outweighed the risks. As she completed her plans, an ache of anticipation coiled within her. Would her efforts resonate, and could this collaborative venture gain momentum? The thrill of possibility was tinged with the weight of uncertainty, but she knew this was merely another step in a larger narrative, one sculpted by courage, intention, and the unwavering belief that every shared story mattered. With her workshop schedule in hand, Sarah prepared to invite her classmates into this new chapter. But even as optimism coursed through her veins, she sensed the shadows of doubt lurking nearby. Would those shadows rear back with greater ferocity when faced with the realities of this venture? There was only one way to find out. As she pulled her phone from her pocket, determined to reach out, an unsettling thought struck her. Would her vision for the future be strong enough to withstand the challenges that lay ahead? As Sarah previewed the messages on her phone, the weight of her decision hung heavily in the air. She had lingered on the cusp of outreach for too long. The time had come to act. With a steadying inhale, she began composing her first message, carefully choosing her words to convey her vision clearly and inspire collaboration. "Hi everyone, I hope this message finds you well. I've been reflecting on the lessons we learned together in school, and I believe there's an opportunity for us to create something impactful." Her fingers trembled slightly as she hit send. Each notification felt like an impending verdict, eliciting an anxiety that clawed at her confidence. Soon after, the responses began trickling in. Some were enthusiastic, others lukewarm. One message from Claire, who had always been supportive, brought a warming smile to Sarah's face. "This sounds amazing! I'd love to brainstorm with you." However, Scott's reply cut deeper. "Not sure I'm the right fit. I'm focused on my own projects right now." A familiar wave of doubt washed over her. Was Scott's dismissal a reflection of her own limitations? Nonetheless, she resisted the temptation to retreat. For every hesitant response, there was also a flicker of excitement from others who believed in her mission. They saw the potential. They were ready to join her. As the days unfolded, the planning sessions took shape. Sarah found herself navigating through a blend of anticipation and self-doubt, bustling between virtual meetings and brainstorming sessions sprinkled with laughter and creative energy. Each voice added layers to her vision, and her self-assurance slowly began to solidify. Yet beneath this newfound camaraderie, the gnawing fear of inadequacy remained. During one particular meeting, as they discussed the format of the workshops, she noticed her heart racing when it was her turn to present her ideas. "We should focus on audience interaction," she stated, her voice wavering slightly. "Perhaps we can create storytelling circles that allow participants to share their own connections to the themes." To her relief, positive affirmations followed her suggestion. "Great idea," Claire chimed in. Still, an inner critic whispered that her ideas weren't groundbreaking enough. The thought haunted her, reminiscent of a shadow that stretched longer with each passing day. Faced with the duality of excitement and insecurity simmering within her, she realized this was not simply about building workshops. It was about confronting the vulnerability that accompanied leadership. She was not just curating a program. She was revealing her own capacity to lead, to be seen, and to take risks.
Every session required her to embrace authenticity and facilitation, to prove to herself that she was worthy of the space she was creating. As she engaged in discussions about marketing plans, vision statements, and innovative approaches, Sarah felt herself evolving into a leader. Moments of doubt tried to constrict her, but each time she confronted them head-on. Her peers began reflecting back strengths she hadn't recognized in herself. "You have a gift for connecting diverse ideas," Scott admitted during a session, surprising her with his insight. His acknowledgement cut through her self-doubt, but it also stirred a new uncertainty.
Was she truly ready to let go of her fears and step into what leadership meant? Navigating this balance felt like walking a tightrope, with each compliment and critique acting as weights that pulled her in different directions. Weeks transformed into an unrelenting rush of preparation for their pilot workshop. As the date loomed closer, the collective energy bubbled with anticipation, but the shadows of anxiety lurked stubbornly in Sarah's mind. Would she be able to hold the space effectively? Would they align in purpose, or would chaos ensue? In a moment of reflection, Sarah found herself staring at a photograph of her grandfather on her desk, the one who had instilled in her the belief that every story mattered. His eyes seemed to peer into her soul, nudging her. Empowerment echoed in his smile, urging her to wield vulnerability as both strength and an invitation to others. With the workshop day finally arriving, Sarah stood before the mirror, preparing herself for the role she had envisioned. But just as she thought she was ready to embrace the day, doubt stirred once more. Was she fully equipped to guide others down this transformational path? The weight of her intentions pressed upon her, forcing her to ask once again if she was enough. As she stepped out, the hum of her heart guided her forward. Every heartbeat reverberated the same question. Was this truly the moment to ignite the change she envisioned, or would it combust under her watch? With a mix of uncertainty and determination, she set out towards the venue, ready to confront whatever awaited her. Each step filled her with the knowledge that the true test of her journey was not just the success of the workshops, but the courage to see it through alongside others. But as she approached the entrance, a chilling thought crossed her mind. Could she bear the consequences if everything fell apart? As she walked through the venue doors, the sounds of excited chatter enveloped her, electrifying the atmosphere with potential. Sarah paused, taking a moment to feel the room's energy. The brightly colored banners and strategic seating arrangements were crafted to facilitate connection and dialogue. Yet, beneath this curated brightness, her anxiety lingered. Would she be able to harness this energy to foster genuine engagement? The workshop had drawn participants from a myriad of backgrounds, all searching for a semblance of fulfillment through shared stories. As she surveyed the eager faces, Sarah felt a pang of responsibility. The weight of their expectations became a tangible force pressing against her chest. She quickly scanned her notes again, grounding herself in her content. Each word meticulously cherry-picked to ensure clarity and inspiration. She needed to remember that this was not merely about delivering information. It was about creating a shared narrative. The session began, and she introduced the concept of storytelling circles with a mix of enthusiasm and trepidation. "Our stories connect us," she declared, attempting to solidify her voice. "In sharing, we find common ground." The participants nodded, some with knowing smiles. As they began to share their own experiences, Sarah noticed the transformations occurring in real time. Faces animated, laughter bubbled, and shared tears flowed, all typical components of vulnerability. Yet, facing the growing interaction, the looming shadow of self-doubt clawed at her once more. Was she facilitating authentically enough, or merely in the role of a host? Sarah fought against the impulse to retreat behind the safety of her notes. Authenticity required not just presenting a topic, but embodying it through her every action. During a particularly spirited exchange, she noticed a participant struggling to find her voice.
There was an unmistakable frustration etched on her face, which mirrored Sarah's internalized conflict of accepting or resisting her own leadership role. Without thinking too much, Sarah stepped into the circle, gently investing her energy into coaxing the woman's story out. "What if we share together, two threads intertwined?" she proposed. In that moment, time seemed to slow as they connected. Her vulnerability met with another's fear. The room hummed with empathetic understanding as participants leaned into the moment. The woman laughed and then began to share. Within seconds, the circle shifted. It wasn't just Sarah guiding anymore. It was a dynamic exchange, a collaborative creation of trust. Magnified by the support around her, a realization sunk in. Leadership was not a solitary performance, but a tapestry woven together in complex and meaningful ways. This was the kind of vulnerability she had long shied away from, and in embracing it, she transformed her own perception of leadership. However, as the workshop progressed, another fear seeped into the space beneath her resolve. What if the participants took their newfound connections and shifted their own expectations? What if they left her behind, basking in the glow of their shared experience, while she remained vulnerable, exposed, and in search of affirmation? The questions lingered like dark clouds, threatening to overshadow the breakthroughs emerging around her. Amidst the ongoing exchanges, Sarah's mind raced. Could she continue fostering this environment? Did her participants realize that their stories, while empowering, were also a reflection of her own uncertainties? She sought reassurance in their expressions, holding on to the shared laughter and stories, grappling with the idea that all of this was bigger than her. As the workshop wrapped up, an unexpected surge of enthusiasm washed over her. Emotions intertwined with newfound insights danced through the group, leaving an impression greater than mere words could express. Participants shared their gratitude, some with tears still glistening in their eyes, affirming the connection fostered despite her hesitations.
Reflecting on the conversations she had ignited, the threads of inspiration began to weave a new pattern in her mind. Was it time to approach Scott again, perhaps armed with the confidence of having awakened something powerful within others? Just as Sarah was about to thank everyone and close the session, a participant interrupted her with a challenging question. "What's next for you after this? Are you ready for what you've just begun?" The room fell silent. That question echoed in our mind, awakening excitement and trepidation simultaneously. Sarah paused, breath caught in her throat, the enormity of the question hanging in the air, leaving her heart racing. The time had come to face the consequence of her choices. What could her next steps be? Sarah's mind swirled in a tempest of self-reflection as the silence in the room pressed against her like an iron mantle. The question posed by the participant reverberated in her consciousness. What was next? What could she possibly aspire to now that the workshop had not only ignited passion, but also laid bare her vulnerabilities? In that moment, watching her audience's expectant faces, Sarah began to realize that this was not merely a professional checkpoint. It was a sculptor's chisel cleaving deeper into her identity. She had long subdued her ambitions beneath the weight of professional responsibilities. Today, however, she felt the faint stirrings of change. Unearthed potential pulsated through her veins, igniting a flicker of determination. "What's next for me?" she echoed, her voice steadying as she embraced the query. This was a pivotal moment, an opportunity for growth and evolution. The sense of vulnerability that had once shackled her now transformed into a springboard. Instead of grappling solely with her insecurities, she pondered how to leverage this experience as a foundation for her own development. In the aftermath of this workshop, Sarah envisioned pathways, the untapped workshops that could emerge from this dynamic format. Could she create a series designed to delve deeper into not just the storytelling aspect, but also into personal growth? The idea began forming, brightening with possibility. However, a shadow of doubt loomed.
Could she maintain the energy, the authenticity that had sparked so much connection today? Taking a deep breath, she shifted her focus back to the present, fully acknowledging her fear but refusing to let it consume her. Each beat of her heart reminded her that every skilled storyteller had once been an uncertain novice, and every leader a hesitant follower. It was this very humility that would allow her to grow. The revelation struck her. Even in doubt, she could cultivate new skills. As the group prepared to disperse, she locked eyes with the participant who had challenged her. "I'm ready to explore the next steps," she declared, her voice rich with newfound conviction. "And I'd love for you to join me in this evolution. Together, we can push past our comfort zones." The nods of agreement and murmurs of excitement that rippled through the room validated her instinct. Could this connection be the base of something grander? She envisioned not only expanding her workshops, but perhaps launching a collaborative project that fused storytelling with personal development. As she began to outline the next ideas in her head, a wave of sudden clarity cascaded over her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She envisioned herself developing programs that capitalized on shared stories, but also incorporated tools for self-discovery and reflection. Yet the clarity was accompanied by a pang of fear as she questioned the logistics, the resources, and the potential hurdles ahead. Would she need support beyond her network? Was it feasible to bring her vision to life? Just then, Scott entered her line of sight. The authority and commitment in his posture reminded her of the influence he wielded. Confronting him could either fortify her emerging vision or scatter it in the wind. Igniting her courage, Sarah forced her gaze past the familiar trepidation. The expansion of herself had begun to grow roots, and embracing that took precedence. "Scott," she called over the gentle hum of conversation, feeling her heart leap into her throat at the uncertainty of his reaction. As he turned, instincts fused together, fear, hope, and determination weaving an intricate pattern in her mind. "I've been thinking about what could come next for me," she continued boldly, resisting the urge to falter. "I want to dive deeper into this work, and I'd like your support in making it happen." His brow furrowed slightly, intrigued but inscrutable. The moment stretched, anticipation crackling in the air as she awaited his response, her heart beating with both uncertainty and solidifying strength. Sarah had crossed a threshold, but what lay on the other side? Would the courage she'd summoned withstand the challenge ahead? Scott's gaze lingered on Sarah, evaluating her with a scrutiny that made her pulse race. It was a moment steeped in tension, every second stretching out as if to emphasize the weight of her ambition against the backdrop of his status. She held her breath, caught between exhilaration and anxiety. Would he understand her vision, or would he dismiss it as just another fleeting idea? "Expand on that," he finally said, his arms crossed but his tone surprisingly inviting. The gesture broke the tension slightly, and she felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. She inhaled deeply, beginning to articulate her thoughts, weaving her dreams into an intricate narrative. "I see a series of workshops that explore not just storytelling, but also personal growth through those stories. Each session could guide participants to uncover their own narratives, help them embrace their vulnerabilities while discovering their strengths." His brow remained furrowed, but his interest seemed piqued. "That's ambitious, but how will you ensure it resonates with others?" The question struck her deeply. It wasn't enough to have a vision, she had to make it applicable and appealing. In this moment, doubt flickered like a candle's flame. How would she bridge the gap between her personal aspirations and the realities of her audience's needs? Thoughts raced through her mind, each one wrestling with the next. Content was essential, but she needed a structure, a way to engage participants while still pushing them out of their comfort zones. "I could conduct a survey, gather feedback from previous participants. What do they seek to discover? What obstacles hold them back?" She pondered aloud, her voice gaining momentum. "We could implement elements of storytelling to illustrate these challenges, creating experiential learning moments." Scott nodded, the uncertainty in his demeanor beginning to dissipate. That's a solid start, but it sounds like you'll need more than just ideas. You need resources, partnerships perhaps? The question hit her harder than she anticipated. Her network had always been limited to familiar faces, a web of connections wrapped snugly in comfort. "I've never considered partnerships before," she confessed, her confidence wavering. "What if I don't find anyone willing to invest in my vision?" Start small. Reach out to those who have shown interest in your work. It's about building relationships, establishing trust. You may be surprised at who is willing to help, he replied, the flicker of encouragement in his eyes anchoring her resolve. Sarah felt the muscles in her shoulders relax, the tightness in her chest easing. She was stepping into uncharted territory, but perhaps that was where growth lay, waiting for her, just beyond the edge of her comfort zone. As they discussed logistics, the conversation began to flow more freely. They mapped potential themes for the workshops, identifying key areas of personal growth and resonance with the audience. With each idea, she felt her vision transform from a diffuse spark into a tangible plan. Yet the lingering question tapped on the door of her consciousness. Could she truly lead such a venture? And what if the feedback turned against her? Would she have the resilience to embrace both the successes and the inevitable failures that accompanied risk? "Scott, what happens if it doesn't go as planned?" The words slipped out, raw with vulnerability. He met her gaze directly. "Then you learn. Every failure is a lesson in disguise. It's not about avoiding storms. It's about learning to sail through them." His response lingered in the air, a lighthouse guiding her wavering spirit. She could see it clearly now. Every challenge was an opportunity wrapped in uncertainty. The path forward would not be easy, but Sarah felt the weight of her potential, unfurling like a banner in the wind. Just as she was about to express her gratitude, a silhouette flickered at the edge of her peripheral vision. A familiar face she hadn't planned to see today. Ashley, her colleague and notorious skeptic, sauntered into the room, her expression unreadable. Sarah's stomach twisted. Would Ashley's doubts add to the weight of her questioning? "Scott, Sarah, what's the buzz about?" Ashley's voice sliced through the room, the anticipation of a challenge embedded in her tone. Sarah's thoughts ground to a halt, a whirlpool of anxiety rising within her. While Scott seemed intrigued, Ashley's skepticism might unravel everything she had just built. Would she still have the confidence to confront her fears? "Here we go," Sarah murmured under her breath, mentally preparing herself for the confrontation that awaited. What would Ashley bring to the discussion? And could Sarah stand firm in her newfound vision against the headwinds of doubt? Sarah braced herself as Ashley approached, her self-assured demeanor infusing the atmosphere with uncertainty. "I hope it doesn't involve more of the Mayan stories, Sarah," she said with a bite, sounding purposefully skeptical. "We're in the real world, after all. How do you plan to make this relevant to anyone?" Caught between the excitement of her plans and the weight of Ashley's disapproval, Sarah felt the remnants of her previous fears bubble to the surface. But she knew this was a defining moment. No more retreating, no more insecurities veiling her aspirations. She stood tall, letting her conviction anchor her thoughts. "It's precisely about making connections, Ashley," Sarah responded, her voice steady. "We often overlook the relevance of our shared histories in navigating our personal challenges. This isn't just about Mayan culture. It's about what we can learn from past resilience to confront our own current struggles." Ashley raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet hesitant, clearly unsure where this conversation was heading. It was vital to harness that glimmer of curiosity. "You think people will really engage with that? That they'll want to dig up those old stories from their pasts?" Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the rush of emotions course through her. "Yes, I think they will. Just as I've found value in my own family's history, I believe our stories are what bind us.
Vulnerability creates strength, a powerful tool for healing and growth. The room fell silent, the weight of Sarah's words hanging in the air. She glimpsed Ashley's skepticism softening, replaced by an expression of genuine curiosity. Perhaps this was the moment to illustrate how Sarah's vision was not just seeking validation from history, but actively redefining their community's narrative. Scott jumped in, sensing the shift. Sarah's right, Ashley. No one is advocating for a dry recitation of facts. We're aiming to foster empathy through personal stories. The dynamics of this workshop are designed to create a dialogue, not a lecture. Ashley looked back and forth between them, slowly nodding, still cautious. However, the tension seemed to ease slightly as she weighed their words. Fine, let's say it can work, but how do you plan on sustaining interest? People tend to wander after a few sessions if they aren't seeing results. Sarah felt her heart race with the notion of sustainable engagement. It was true. Maintaining interest would require thoughtful planning. We can create follow-up resources, address participant feedback, and adapt the workshops accordingly, she explained, her confidence buoyed by the challenge. What's crucial is creating a community where participants feel valued and heard. Ashley crossed her arms, skepticism replaced with the faintest flicker of approval. All right, I admit that could be interesting. Just make sure you're ready for pushback. Pushback is just an opportunity to learn, Sarah replied, feeling grounded and resolute. With each word, she was transforming the previous shadows of doubt into stepping stones for clarity and direction. The encounter ignited something profound within Sarah. She felt a surge of determination to not only validate her vision, but to position herself as a leader capable of influencing change. It was a stark departure from the hesitant woman standing before the board a few weeks ago. Later, as the meeting wrapped up, Sarah found herself buzzing with excitement, all remnants of doubt overshadowed by the sense of conviction in her purpose. She was no longer wandering amidst uncertainty. She was beginning to chart a clear course toward her aspirations. In the days that followed, fueled by newfound motivation, Sarah dove deeply into her plans. She crafted not just workshop outlines, but a mission statement, a clear vision of intertwined histories informing contemporary growth. Soon, she reached out to community spaces, seeking partnerships with local businesses and organizations that could help promote the workshops. It felt exhilarating to step into the realm of collaboration. The idea of others joining her in the pursuit of collective understanding resonated deeply with her. As Sarah continued her outreach, she garnered feedback and solidarity from those who believed in the power of connection through storytelling. A wave of encouragement flooded her efforts. She felt the weight of her grandfather's legacy pushing her forward, urging her to break through barriers. On the day of the first workshop rollout, Sarah could hardly contain her anticipation as participants began to gather. She welcomed each newcomer with a mix of excitement and gratitude. Each story shared by the attendees filled her with inspiration, fueling her passion. The once nagging doubts had been transformed. What lay before her now was a collective journey propelled by shared histories and newfound intentions. By the end of the session, she knew the workshops were not just a means of storytelling. They had become a platform for transforming vulnerability into strength, for forging connections that transcended the rigid barriers erected by tradition. Sarah had conquered her fears, proving to herself and others the necessity and beauty of weaving together their experiences. And as she stood amidst grateful participants who left with newfound insights and a sense of purpose, Sarah finally understood the truth of her journey. She had effectively connected her past, present, and future. She was not only honoring her grandfather's legacy, she was establishing her own. As she packed up the last of the materials, a whisper of excitement flowed through her. This was merely the beginning. The turning point was crystal clear. She would continue this path of growth and connection. Sarah realized she was now poised to embark on an even bigger adventure, one where she would lead the charge in reshaping narratives, fostering empathy, and building a bridge between the past and the present, armed with tangible evidence of courage and achievement. Emboldened by her journey, she smiled at the reflection of her own agency, the culmination of hard-fought battles metamorphosizing into legitimate impact on the narrative of her community. The future awaited her, one sculpted by resolve, resilience, and an unwavering belief that every story, including her own, could ignite powerful transformations. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible journeys of transformation. This is the moment to show your support for those who dare to confront their fears, to reshape their destinies through the power of their stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these inspiring narratives alive. Comment below your thoughts on this transformation and your own theories about what lies ahead for Sarah. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who crave inspiration and direction in their own journeys. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful conclusion.